Good morning, Saturday moaners. Welcome to the last Saturday before Christmas. My God, it's Christmas this week, guys. Where's the time gone? And we're not going to pretend that it's all been fizzy and fun, because we've tried to deliver the best that we can on Vlogmas, but it's been a funny old month, hasn't it? Been strange. It's flown by, absolutely flown by. In fact, I was also going through, for those who know the movie side of the channel, I was going through the films of the year. And as I was kind of going through the films of the year, I was seeing stuff that I saw in January, February, and March, which felt like they were about 5 years ago. Has anyone else got this strange sense? I think because so much sort of, well, trauma and upset and distress has happened, it sort of stretches out time. I've come to the conclusion time isn't straightforward. It's a strange, malleable, flexible thing. How is everyone? Good morning. Ellery, thank you. I saw you said that you kind of got halfway through Green Fingered Hell. Absolutely. Let's hope the new year brings a revitalized approach to the garden. You know, we've lost some characters, but we're going to plow on regardless. My mum, just in terms of the briefest of updates, my mum has undergone tests and she is back home, and they're none the wiser as to what has potentially caused her to go in. So of course the concern is, could it repeat? Could it return? Trying to get to the bottom of it medically has been very stressful, and all aspects of it aren't particularly clear. And I can't work out whether the doctor's strike has formed part of the nebulous feedback that we've got. But anyway, suffice it to say, for those of you, obviously care about Nanny Di, as we all do, worried about where she's at, she's back at home and her care team are looking after her, though we are actually none the wiser as to what was causing such pain. So I'm sure we will be pushing on in that stress. It's almost more mystical and mysterious than the interstellar object. And my mum's so small; she's almost the opposite of an interstellar object. So good morning, everyone. Morning from Cornwall, says Charlene Evans. Just watching your countryside walk, hilarious. Thank you. Yeah, do check out Vlogmas this week. It was a trip to Oxfordshire. Or in Oxfordshire. We went to Blenheim Palace. There's a little bit more of Blenheim Palace tonight, and then it's back to the madness of trying to get Narnia built. So do check that out. That'll be landing tonight. I think it will be a shorter Vlogmas tonight, but rest assured, you're going to get back on board with the dramas and narrative of all that's going on here. Lots to kind of look forward to. We've got the Sausage Dog Get Together, not in tonight's, but that's coming in central London. We've got the Gingerbread Exhibition, which has become almost a feature of our Vlogmas. So anyway, for those of you listening on podcast who've come for the news, I'm going to shut the fuck up about the channel. But there you go. Narnia is coming, and Narnia is coming, as is Mr. Is it Tumnus? Mr. Tumnus. Apparently, what's Greta Gerwig, I believe, is making a Narnia film or series of films for Netflix. That could be intriguing. Hello in Spain, Jill Taylor. So the big news today? Thank you, Hutchie Boy. The big news today is the Epstein files being released. Now, the reason I laugh is not because baked into this are so many severe and serious implications. It was a paedophilic grooming ring gang that was populated with enormous numbers of wealthy, some famous, some incredibly powerful men and women. No one likes to talk about it in terms of it being a grooming gang, because in this country, the only grooming gangs that matter, according to the likes of Tommy Robinson and Nigel Farage, are grooming gangs that feature, people, foreigners. Johnny foreigners. Only foreign grooming gangs do damage to their victims. So I'd like to, in the fashion of Donald Trump, say all grooming gangs are bad. All grooming gangs are bad. And I'd just like to stress that really, let's just re-skew the Epstein files so that when people see it in a title, they go, oh God, the Epstein, it's a grooming gang. If you can get animated and excitable and you can stand with a placard saying protect everyone from only grooming gangs that are populated by Muslims or Pakistani people or people of ethnic minorities, whereas actually the vast majority of grooming gangs are committed and conducted by white people in this country, but that, that's not the same sort of thing, is it? Same. Anyway, so the Epstein files. So the reason this is significant: grooming gang, paedophilia, huge numbers of victims who are still alive and struggling and have had no justice and are still afraid for their lives. And also Epstein, a proven intelligence asset, not just for Israel, but he had strong ties to Mossad, the IDF, and Israeli governance. I would argue the Epstein files feeds into, and it's always been to say, it's in my opinion, they also feed into why we've seen such a lackluster approach and a refusal and a resistance and a reluctance to engage in condemnation of Israel committing a live-streamed genocide. So for me, the Epstein story fractures off into so many other disparate but highly connected aspects of life. And we're going to be talking about Tommy Robinson getting put in his place in Dubai. Absolutely. We've got the clip. It's incredibly satisfying. So we're going to be talking about the Epstein files that have been released. And it is, so when I take a lightness of touch to them, it's, as you've probably heard from that wee little monologue, it's not to dismiss the seriousness of everything I've just discussed, because that's the seriousness and the implications of the Epstein files. But there is, you would be forgiven for not thinking this is a sick joke, what the Trump administration have released and claimed is and are the Epstein files. We're also going to be talking about David Walliams being dropped by not only his publishers, but the BBC. This has been a story that's been swirling around in the background in the murky areas of the media, which hasn't really kind of landed in a big way or necessarily in the way that some still sort of discuss. But this is an evolving story, and the David Walliams story has moved a step on. He's been dropped due to inappropriateness. He denies these claims, absolutely. But yeah, so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to look at Tommy Robinson's moment whilst he was in, this is weird, he was in a Muslim country. Good God. I mean, I'm amazed they let him in. You know, with all this kind of don't let Muslims in here and all Muslims are evil and Muslims everywhere. And I'm afraid, gird your loins, I've got the most eye-wateringly embarrassing statement from Benjamin Netanyahu, that flaccid sack of urine, who is on Australian television telling the Australians that Muslims and Hamas and Palestinians want Australians dead. I mean, desperation is, I've never seen desperation like it. He's like the ultimate pick-me boy. It's like, it's all about me, me, me. And I think because the reason he's done this, and we're going to show you the clip later, is because he feels that very quickly, and I'm not suggesting for a minute that the tragedy, the awfulness of what happened on Bondi Beach was in any way a staged situation. I'm not suggesting that for a minute. But it doesn't really matter when you have ghoulish, grisly individuals like Netanyahu waiting on the sidelines, seeking to take advantage of a tragedy like that as rapidly as he does. He's always there, isn't he? Billy No Mates, always on the edge, always on the margins. What's the catastrophe? How many have died? How many Jews? Right. Okay, let's use that to tell everyone it's all right to fucking murder thousands, tens of thousands of Gazans. Oof. Anyway, okay, well, let's get to the Epstein files. Now, I'm going to show you an image. So, I mean, this is remarkable. This is remarkable. Here's an image of some of the files released yesterday, today, / time difference, etc. Here's an image that the Guardian's pulled together. Now, the bits in black are redacted. And as you can see from, how many are there? 15 pages. It's pretty much all redactions. I mean, that looks like my maths book when I was at primary school, when I was trying to draw better and better squares. But there you go. There's some of your redacted material. Quite flabbergasting, really. I think 150 pages of total redaction. Danny fucking Price has uploaded a reel of trying to find content in amongst the released files. Check this out. So we go Epstein files redacted, and there you go. You can see basically he's scrolling through various pages. Every page black, redact, 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 redact. Wow, it just never stops, the redaction. I mean, there's so much redaction, it takes you about 3 minutes to read what's left. This is real. Look, he's going through pages after pages after pages. We're looking at what sort of 45 seconds of scroll. If you're listening on podcast, you think, what the fuck's going on? We're literally just scrolling through screens of black, going up and up and up and up and up. Just going to get down some of the old cold coffee. Hold on. So there you have it. I mean, I think you have a sense of things. So let's have a listen, shall we, to some of the responses, how this is landing around the world. Let's listen to the inimitable Simon Marks, who is LBC's Man in America. Have a listen to this.
Possible interest has either been held back or has been redacted to the point where, I mean, it's a joke. You don't have to be a conspiracy theorist on this occasion to sense that there is a White House cover-up taking place and that whatever is in those files that they are holding back, you know, certainly there will be information that you don't want to release in the public domain because you do want to protect victims. Maybe there is suddenly this huge amount of new information that Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, claims that the sanctity of investigations require information to be redacted. But also, let's be honest, it's pretty possible that those documents contain more evidence relating to the president's relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. And that stuff, they are going to hold back until the last possible minute that a court, and probably the Supreme Court, says, no, you've got to put this stuff out there. And they're going to run the clock out.
Do you maybe I'm just too cynical for my own good, but I've got this sneaky feeling we're never going to see the full Epstein files.
Yes, and it kind of, I think Matthew Wright's absolutely right there. I don't think there's ever in a month of Sundays there's gonna be a time where we see everything. I mean, where? Here's the thing. Do you remember how the Trump administration, Bondi, said the files are on my desk, and then the files weren't on her desk? There weren't files, then there were files. It was a hoax like the Russian hoax. There's nothing to see here. And in a weird way, whilst the redactions make an absolute mockery of the supposed transparency, the supposed release, the fact that the American government closed early, as MeTube said, apparently in mid-session yesterday, a day early, to avoid, presumably, the embarrassment and the humiliation of being asked any questions about the fact that the vast majority of the released files were just redacted. Here's one thing this is kind of curiously literal. Albeit that they're all redacted, and I'm going to show you the photos in a minute that have also come through. Albeit that they're redacted, what this proves is there are documents to be redacted. And what we will forever have in the public realm now is, if you like, proof, as I think Simon Marks suggests there, of a cover-up. This is the cover-up. I mean, literally covered up. Everything is covered up with black redacted ink or blockage. So do you get me? There's a sort of the smoking gun is there. And now that they've had to place documents into the public realm that, albeit look like this, we have documents now that look like this. So you could never claim, for instance, let's looking at this screen. If you're listening on podcast, I'm showing the 15 redacted pages that the Guardian has published. You could never now pretend that those 15 pages don't exist and that there is redacted material. That's now a fact. It's now an empirical fact that they're out. And okay, admittedly, we don't know what's beneath that redaction, but someone does. And, you know, the information is out there. So to that extent, I don't think all is lost. I don't think all is lost. But we're going to go through, I'm just going to go through some of the new photos. Now, the weird thing about the photos is there's not particularly, again, no massive revelations as to who we see in them, although you may have seen in that report that Michael Jackson pops up, and a huge amount of hostility to our reaction to the Michael Jackson trailer. But you know, I haven't seen any images of Michael Jackson pop up before, so that's a first. So within these images, not necessarily new characters that we haven't heard about, that we're not aware of, but I suppose it's that strange thing, isn't it? It's just like when I say prurient, there's not a sort of prurient interest from any, you know, gratification. There's a prurient interest in that. I find it fascinating to look at these images and think of what makes these people tick. How much did they know? What do they know? And it's really important to say legally that just because you're seen in these images, just because these famous faces are in these images, it doesn't necessarily mean any of them necessarily were involved, obviously, in any criminal acts. But there is increasingly, with certain faces that you're about to see in some of these images, a sort of, not guilt by association, but there's a sort of, well, could you have really not known anything? So here we go. Here's some further images. That's very kind of you, Ellery. A gifted membership there for one person anonymously will receive a gifted membership. Robert Marriott, I was really shocked to see Noam Chomsky. So here's Sarah Ferguson sitting next to someone who's been redacted. Next to her and at first I thought that image on the left was, oh my God, is that someone actually sort of, you know, flexing their calf muscle? But presumably it's a work of art. So there's Sarah Ferguson. There's Bill Clinton in a jacuzzi alongside someone who has also been redacted. Now, again, the act of redaction is inherently creates one of suspicion. But it's important to also state for legal reasons that just because something's redacted, it doesn't necessarily mean that something illegal is happening to them. But I think when you know the kind of essence of what's going on with the Epstein files and the nature of what Epstein was up to, the allegations, the suggestions, the victims, it's kind of a safe bet to assume that perhaps the redacted images are those of the victims. I'd be interested to know if any of the victims are allowed to say, don't redact me. I don't want to be redacted. Let them see me. Because, you know, there could be this kind of artificial sense of we're redacting it for your own safety and your own sort of, you know, for you really. And it's, you don't need to redact me. So there's Bill Clinton. Every time I see Bill Clinton, I feel more disgusted. I feel like I need to have a shower and a wash every time I see him. Richard Branson again with Epstein. I mean, you know, Branson, I mean, he has an island. Maybe they're just neighbors. Maybe that's like, can I borrow some milk? Maybe that's what he's asking. Two people in the background there, redacted. This is a really quite hideous image of Epstein looking like some character from the 1970s Batman. Well, because he looks like the Joker. So much redaction in this, and it doesn't take a genius to work out that the redacting is clearly to prevent identity, but also most of the women around him are topless. Chris Tucker with Ghislaine Maxwell, with someone who looks very young adult, redacted behind him. David Copperfield, the magician, doing his vanishing trick. If only he could, I bet Ghislaine Maxwell wishes he managed to make her disappear, with his leg up, around and against Ghislaine Maxwell. David Copperfield is in the files a lot. This image is one that's doing the rounds a lot. This is taken allegedly at Windsor Castle. Ghislaine Maxwell at the back. A lot of redacted images there. Again, doesn't necessarily mean that they were victims, but sort of lying across the laps of 5 people who've been redacted is Prince Andrew, the guy who doesn't sweat, the guy who likes a pizza. This image here, Bill Clinton. Now, Bill Clinton on what looks like an aeroplane with a young woman sat on his lap who's been redacted. It doesn't look good for Bill Clinton. I've never liked him, but it really doesn't look good for him. And it makes, you know, I'm only suggesting this as a thought. Here's lots of more images of Bill Clinton looking like a really prurient, self-satisfied, smug, horrible, in it up to his elbows kind of individual. And there was his wife, Hillary Clinton, standing on platforms, legitimizing Israel's genocide and accusing anyone who's watched the awfulness of the atrocities of being Hamas supporters, propagandists, victims of China, it's just unforgivable. There's clearly some compromise here. There is the Clintons are entirely compromised, and if they're being played like puppets, they're being manipulated, they're being used, and Clinton's defense of Israel, I think, is entirely connected to, in my opinion, these sorts of images and his involvement. Here's another image of Bill Clinton. Look, disappointing, isn't it? Mick Jagger at the middle of the table. Let's say disappointing. Again, is it guilt by association? Can I ask you that question, though? So here's Mick Jagger. Because you now know, I'm not suggesting any, and maybe none of you are Mick Jagger fans. Is there guilt by association with this? Give me a yes or no, guys. Do you feel that when you see someone like Chris Tucker just then, we don't know that necessarily they did anything wrong at all, but is there guilt by association? Or do we have to sort of tread carefully? What they put Monica Lewinsky through at 22 was horrific, Tina Biscuit. And let's not forget, Bill Clinton's sexual encounter with Monica Lewinsky was entirely controlled and monitored and bugged and used by Israeli intelligence. Oh, look, here we go. Lots of entertainment people just hobnob at parties, not guilty. Me too. No, you're absolutely right. As a statement of fact, it's clearly the fact. But I'm kind of looking less at the kind of literalness of it, just what a kind of hunch is. You know, we wake up in the morning and we can go through the legalistics and we can go through the literals. But what I'm saying is that when you see that, what's your first thought? Is your first thought all celebrities go to think is I don't feel anything? I think my first thing now is, because it's such a hot potato, I look at these images and I do, rightly or wrongly. I mean, we all have feelings and emotions. And we all think things that you can't help. And my gut says, as Teresa A3421 says, my gut says yes. And, you know, I then go to thinking critically. I then go to, oh, okay, well, maybe, you know, maybe not. But my first thought is one of, oh, and then I kind of try and unpack it. So I wish I could be like you, Mitchum. I'm the other way around. So when I see Mick Jagger, I initially go like that. And then I have to rein it back in and go, well, just because he sat next to Bill Clinton, he doesn't look like he particularly wants to sit next to Bill Clinton. So who knows? Michael Jackson, this is gonna fan the flames of a controversial character and his involvement. You know, I mean, just check out the comments under mine and Nadia's response or reaction to the Michael Jackson trailer. People extraordinarily hot under the collar about that. And I can't work out either way whether he was one thing or the other. Was he also compromised because of his wanting to publish the song regarding Palestine? Or was he in arrested development? Did he sleep or have kids for sleepovers because he was a big kid? Who knows? There's Michael Jackson with this guy who just forever looks really odd. Does anyone else just find Jeffrey Epstein? Epstein is his sort of smirky, not entirely sort of unfriendly face. You can see how he's sort of quite, he's like, oh. Here's an interesting one. There's Clinton on the far right alongside Spacey, Kevin Spacey popping up again. You know, I think going back to thinking critically, Michu. So you see Kevin Spacey in there. Then you think of all the other stories and allegations. And again, yeah, there's the legals of, well, he wasn't found guilty for this, he wasn't found guilty for that. But then you've got to start to think to yourself, well, how many times can someone pop up alongside the wrong type of people in the wrong situations with the wrong accusations? And at what point do we go, even my critical thinking is beginning to go, even my critical thinking's critical of me. Do you get me? MeTube says, I've definitely been at functions where dodgy business people have been in attendance. Was I not going to go while all my colleagues went and innocently enjoyed the party? Of course not. Fair point. So there you go. Dodgy party. I mean, like that guy on the far left. Haven't got a clue who he is. He's just like, fucking hell, do I have to be in this photo? Epstein on a sun lounger with someone on his lap, redacted. Chris Tucker alongside Bill Clinton, not redacted. Bill Clinton alongside Mick Jagger with a woman in the middle, redacted. Again, one just doesn't know. That redaction throws suspicion on the photograph, and I think one could possibly assume there is suspicion, but one can't guarantee it. You know, just keep leaning back into, as MeTube says, the critical thinking. And here's a dashing photo, sarcasm in dashing, of Epstein and Clinton, very intimate buddies, aren't they? I mean, really intimate. But of course, Clinton knew nothing about what Epstein was up to. He knew absolutely nothing. I mean, I'm interested, Mitchell, is your critical thinking, are you suspicious of the Clintons at all? Do you think there's any sort of smoking gun there? Here's another image of, it was disappointing to see Diana Ross. This is a curious one because you've got Michael Jackson, you've got Diana Ross, you've got Bill Clinton. And then it's quite hard because of the nature of this image and because it looks like it's taken in a train carriage or something, or it's odd, or a boat maybe, I don't know. Or maybe it is a plane. I mean, but look, can you see there are 3 boxes that are redacted down the bottom there? Yes, the lack of Trump's presence is notable, Mitchell. Wouldn't it be funny if Trump was, well, I'm not making light, but now look at those 3 redactions. What could they be? I mean, presumably, they're 3 faces, but they're so tiny and small. I can't work out if that's a beanbag or a duvet. For me, of all the images I've seen, this is the most troubling. Those are children. Now, could they be the children of, well, I'm trying to work out if they were, say, Michael Jackson's or Diana Ross's children. I mean, that image for me is a deeply troublesome one, because of the redactions. And actually, I had to look really closely at that. I had to make myself look at it again in order to make sure I was seeing what I was seeing. And again, it's really important to stress the use of redaction. The use of redaction isn't in and of itself a suggestion of guilt or cover. God, Mitchell, you're incredibly reasonable on this, aren't you? I think Bill Clinton had poor judgment in the 90s, but I don't think he's anything like Epstein. Well, I personally, in my opinion, think the Clintons are doing the handiwork of Israel in order to cover up exactly what they got up to. And I think you're right, but I think he was in it up to his elbows because he's in every single tranche. But it's interesting. You're absolutely right. It's interesting that Clinton's everywhere. Clinton everywhere. But where's Trump? Not a Trump, not a hint of him. Let's go to some other reactions. This was CNN as they went through the publication or the release of the files. This was the first thing I saw of it last night.
Talk about blacking out. I don't know if I can get a close up of my phone. This is one of the documents that the Justice Department released. It's 100 pages.
Right,
this is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see. It's all black. It's just 100 pages of redaction. That's the transparency we're getting here.
Right, and I'll.
It's, you know, when I saw that last night, I literally leapt up and said to Nads, because we were having a romantic night last night, and I said, "Good God, can you actually believe this? Look at this." Here's Sky's. This is Sky's reporting on it.
Clinton in a swimming pool with a woman. It could be Ghislaine Maxwell, but her face is turned away from the camera. Thought to be it's a hotel in Brunei, of all places. And we can show you another image now as well, which has been partly redacted. And that's Bill Clinton. It looks like he's reclining there in the jacuzzi as well. Let's show you another one. I'm sure you recognise that place, number 10 Downing Street. And that is Ghislaine Maxwell stood right outside. And there's been a theme amongst a lot of these photos. It is that higher echelon of society that James talked about, where power resides. And there is Ghislaine Maxwell just stood on the steps of the home of the Prime Minister. Next up, a redacted document, completely redacted, but it says masseuses and goes on to maybe 20 or so people. You would imagine that's what that list is.
So a page of redacted names of masseuses. Quite something, isn't it? It's quite, I mean, it's like Simon Marks said, one can have critical thinking, but one can also, in critical thinking, go, you're not necessarily a conspiracy theorist to think that there's a cover-up here. And again, I'm in agreement with those who think it doesn't necessarily mean Donald Trump had necessarily done anything particularly wrong. But I'm just going to play you a couple of other clips that struck me as notable on this. Home of a Prime Minister, not the Prime Minister.
Based on our interviews and a scouring of court records and other sources,
at least 6 people who have accused Maxwell and Epstein of grooming and abuse were at some point introduced to Trump through them. And one of them was a minor. And you can read her story in public court records. She said that she was brought to Mar-a-Lago by Jeffrey Epstein when she was 14 and introduced and said, and Epstein kind of nudged Donald Trump and said, this is a nice one, right? Something like that. So I don't know. I think the reader has to judge if 2 grown men are staying there with a 14-year-old, right? What message can you take from that? What should the men have assumed was happening? And that's a question for Trump to answer. He didn't want to answer any of our questions specifically. We got one blanket statement for a long list of questions. And we'll see if he ever answers those questions.
I recommend this.
See, I mean, there's enough out there. I know, Michib, you're of the opinion that Trump hasn't done anything illegal. There's no necessarily compromising material of him. But the more and more you hear, and the more it's talked about, and the more it's known.
Just got to interrupt. So I've got to just say, I've got to cancel Coca.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm going to do it tonight instead.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you need me to wrap up now?
No, you're okay until when you finish.
Okay.
But just I didn't want anyone thinking.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
want you to say it's after 11. I've got to go and see Hannah.
Oh, okay. All right,
Yeah.
sweetie. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll wrap this
no,
up.
you wrap this normal. Wrap
Okay.
this normal.
Okay, sweetie. Oh, babe. Okay. Sorry about that, guys. I think you got the nature of what's happening behind the scenes. So yes, I mean, insofar as I don't necessarily think Trump, there might not be the direct evidence in the files, but the level of redaction, I think, speaks to a covering up of all the references to Trump within the Epstein files and the extent to which, let's even just park to the side his own direct illegal culpability in any acts as evidenced within the Epstein files. But let's just pause and think, well, perhaps the files demonstrate and illustrate and prove that he absolutely did know and does know the extent to which and what Epstein was up to. That would be enough, I think. It's not even necessarily about compromising PP tapes and all that kind of stuff. If, these files, I think the reason the redactions are so vast is not about redacting behavior, acts, or footage or images, but redacting his awareness, knowledge, and the extent to which his own peccadillos, his own prurient interests, and there are many other accusations that have landed Trump's way about underage women, children, minors, though they don't necessarily sit within the Epstein files. I think that's the problem for Trump. He claims he didn't know what Epstein was up to, and I think the files prove that he did. And that's why they're so heavily redacted, in my opinion. Further clip.
Begin by wishing each and every one of you.
Yeah, just as a line into this, this clip is Donald Trump talking shortly after the release of the Epstein files, paying no reference to them whatsoever. This was just interesting to see him just, shortly after the files came out.
By wishing each and every one of you a very Merry Christmas. Remember, they didn't want to say Merry Christmas when I first started. 2016, we don't want to say Merry Christmas. I said, no, we're going to bring back Christmas. And they don't say that anymore. They don't want to say it, but they don't talk about it anymore because they got shellacked. We're here tonight to celebrate 11 incredible months. It's been the...
And one other last clip.
Less. And maybe we can have reasonable health care without having to cut them out and let it all go awry. So we're going to be calling a meeting. It'll be either in Florida or it'll be here the first week. And I'd prefer not talking and asking questions only for the reason that this is such a big announcement, meaning what these people have said and what the other 4 companies are going to say, which is exactly the same thing, that I really don't want to soil it up by asking questions, even questions that are very fair questions that I'd love to answer. So I think we have to just stop right here.
He's such a giant toddler, isn't he? He is such a giant toddler to the point that he's actually standing there saying, I'm not going to take questions today because he knows he's going to be asked probing, difficult, questions about the Epstein files, and just the way in which he just says, I don't want to soil. I mean, he's so transparent. I just want to read this comment. Fear Ryan, I can't rationally convict or accuse someone of horrific crimes based on them simply being acquainted or posing for a photograph. I totally agree. I totally agree. My point is more about when you see someone increasingly and consistently in those images, it's less about being able, you can't prove they've done anything until you've got proof. And you know, at what point do we say there's a cover-up or there's not a cover-up? And if the cover-up happens, it's like, I can't remember who said, I think it was Scaramouche on the Rest is Politics US. We're in an age now where cover-ups happen right in front of us. And I think what you can say about these Epstein files being released, the level of redaction, the level of reluctance to reveal, the government shutting down earlier, whatever the technical kind of, literal kind of reasons for it, the fact that no one is answerable, no one can be asked questions, the fact that Trump's not taking questions, all of this speaks to the fact that this is a cover-up. And when I say cover-up, if not necessarily a cover-up of the individual acts, this is, let's just get away from that, because that always seems to be the thing that people think, oh, well, you can't really say that they've done this, that, and the other. Okay, well, it's a cover-up of what they all know. I think what this redaction, what these files, the very fact that the files have come out, speaks to the fact that Trump and all of his cronies have lied when they said it was a hoax, when they said that there weren't files, when Bondi went from saying they're on my desk to they're not on my desk. They're all lying. So it's no longer a conspiracy theory to say that everything in these files and these files are being held back, covered up, restrained, restricted, and redacted. And if not, as I keep saying, if not for literal acts of pedophilic sexual abuse by a grooming gang, then what did people know? And what I would argue is everyone who does appear in these images, if they appear in them a lot, I think there's a right, if you had a proper organization probing this in a responsible fashion, such as the FBI, then I think every single person, Mick Jagger, Bill Clinton, everyone should be hauled in, questioned, and everyone should be told what they know. Not that they've necessarily done anything wrong, but who has asked Bill Clinton, what did you know? And if he's unwilling to do that, then I'm afraid, yes, the guilty by association isn't a slam dunk, but it goes up. It goes up. I just think I hate the kind of the smoke and mirrors to keep this in sort of, to keep things opaque and ambivalent and ambiguous. And if it's happening in front of us, it can't be a cover up. And if we put documents in front of us that are redacted, they're not, it's redaction for the victim's sake. I get it. You're not guilty by association, but there comes a point with this unwholesome, unedifying, fucked up story that reaches to the very higher echelons of global government and Israel and America and their intelligence agencies. I don't want to start giving passes. I think everyone who's okay, here's the point. Here's what I think. From Noam Chomsky to Woody Allen, they should all be hauled in and questioned. All of them. Not in terms of what they did necessarily, but what they knew. What did they know? And all of the legalistic shit around, well, it's court cases and got to protect this, got to protect. No, fuck all that. If we had a system that genuinely cared and wasn't about protecting the uber rich, that would be done. So I am going to end early because I just want to see if I can help Nadia in terms of getting to where she needs to get to. So we're going to be curtailing this now. The David Walliams story, the Tommy Robinson row, I may well revisit later with a secondary live. So guys, if you don't mind, Curly Cooks isn't happening as well. So thank you so much for understanding, and I will share with Nads all of your love and all of your concerns. So I'm going to head off and break this early. Okay, guys, thank you.